Talk 92.1, welcome back. Welcome to our final hour, 6 minutes after 8 o'clock on what's going to be an absolute Chamber of Commerce type day when you talk about nothing but sunshine, 8 to 10 mile an hour breeze, and 82 for a high. It's going to be gorgeous
That's
outside.
perfect.
Isn't that perfect?
That is perfect.
And then a Chamber of Commerce finish to the day because they have their business after hours this evening.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it.
Whereabouts?
It's going to be at Valdosta Ice Center, I believe.
Oh, cool.
Tonight.
I won't make it.
Yes, you'll be lip syncing.
No, I will be judging.
I think you should lip sync.
I will be judging lip syncers. My wife did it for Girls on the Run one year. My wife and daughters did it, and one of Spencer's buddies they did Moana.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it was a riot. They did the wigs, the grass skirts, and Maui.
Oh, that's
So
fantastic.
Spencer's buddy was, because he's a spitting image for Maui anyway. So
How about that?
yep. And they told him, no pressure on you. You just have to be Maui and be there, and we'll do all the lip syncing, singing, dancing, everything else.
Oh, that's fun. It's always fun when
Yep.
that Girls on the Run event is a fantastic event every year.
And they not only killed it, they should have won their head-to-head, and they should have been the grand champions, period, end of story. But I was emceeing.
Oh, so you knocked them out.
They got discounted.
Discounted a little bit because the boss was.
There was no doubt to which I was witnessing that they just absolutely slayed it. It was cool. It's fun.
Great.
That's always fun.
Oh yes, it is.
And what a freak of nature fundraiser too.
Yeah,
Kind of money that they come away with.
that's
for that.
great. Yeah,
Funds those wonderful programs.
You know,
in every school.
my daughter has done that the past 2 years, and it's fantastic. And she's really tapped in. I was a runner when I was in high school and college, and she's got it in the genes for sure. And because she ran in the St. John road race with her older brother Henry, and Bailey came in as first for all girls under 19, and she's just in the 5th grade.
Oh no! Wow.
So I was like, wow.
Did she beat Henry though?
Well, Henry ran with her.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice kid.
yeah.
Nice kid.
So I was really proud of her, and I think that program, Girls on the Run, which I know Claire poured her heart into, and has just done a great thing and helps build self-confidence for these young ladies. It's just fantastic.
Yep. Well done. And it really did show up out of nowhere. Well done, Claire.
Oh yeah.
She actually enlisted Leadership Lounge help in that first year at that little pizza joint in Remington. That first shot, first time, and then she joined Leadership Lounge after that.
I know, we were in the small group together.
Oh,
Yes.
I did. Okay.
Class of 2017, best class ever, right? So yeah, so
15,
we were.
15.
Oh yeah.
And I emceed it every year until this past year, this year, Paige Dukes, and that's far more appropriate. Have a strong, successful female up there being the
Absolutely.
lead example.
Yes.
Because again, that's what they're instilling in those young ladies.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Notice I got Hamilton Trust and Estate, Elder Law, all of it tossed in.
Yes.
Hamilton Trust, Estate, and Elder Law.
There you go. The ampersand doesn't look. It's not quite where it
not
needs
placed where
to
it needs to
be
be.
in the logo, but it works. Except in case you try to say it all. But yeah,
All right. And welcome back, by the way.
it's good to be here.
Paul's hard at work again. And I start thinking about the dream team that I would bring together if I won that $1.5 billion Powerball drawing that's going to happen on Saturday.
Yes.
It's up to, nobody won it last night at 1.2. It's 1.5 billion. So I would go grab my friend Paul Hamilton. I would go grab my friend Stacy Bush. I would go grab a CPA.
That's
and say,
right.
You three are the dream team.
There you go.
Be ready to receive.
Yes, we do estate planning all day long. I read somewhere that if you took the lump sum draw on that lottery winning, although it's over $1 billion, that the lump sum you would take would be half a billion. So approximately 500 million if you lump sum it, because you get the billion if you annuitize it over your life.
30 years.
Yeah. Or is it 30 years? And then you get if you pull the lump sum, it reduces the amount that you get
greatly. And then Uncle Sam's waiting for you, not just that year, but the next year.
Because now you're in a high income tax bracket. And I think they said after Uncle Sam gets done with you and the state of Georgia shows up, how's the city of Valdosta get in on this game?
We don't. We don't.
So then
we benefit from whatever you build or grow.
That's right. And then I think by the time, you take the lump sum and then you got $500 million, and then the feds and the state get their chunk, you're left with about 350 million. But as I was reading this, I was thinking, I'd be good with that.
I'd be good with that.
But then you have a tax problem, and then you have an inheritance tax problem. The death tax is coming after you.
That's why I'm not receiving that dough. I'm not even going to claim the big check until my dream team's in place.
Yes. People come to me when we're doing their planning, and one of the first questions they ask is, I don't want the government to get my money. I don't want to have to pay death tax, inheritance tax, or my family members have to pay that.
Well, then you're living in the wrong country.
I know. Well, but the reality is, for 95% of us out there, it's not a factor, because you can gift or pass through inheritance up to $6 million per person or $12 million per couple. So it really doesn't affect a lot of people. Now, those numbers are going to come down after 2025. They're going to come down. I'm sorry, and I think I misspoke, because I was giving you the 2025 numbers. Right now you can gift around $11 million per person, up to $22 million per couple. And after 2025, it comes down to $6 million and $12 million. So, because I don't see Congress rolling that.
That's still 90+% of the.
Yeah, it really is.
Does not affect 90+% of the United States.
But I had a lady say the same thing yesterday. We were working on her estate plan, and we did a mid-level, more basic plan for her. She says, now, if I win that lottery, we're going to come back and have to adjust this. And I said, that's absolutely fine. So I wished her luck with winning. And I rarely play it, but when it gets up high like this, I'll go buy a ticket or two.
And I say that, good-natured fun to say I assembled my dream team, but you do that because otherwise, that money rapidly deteriorates after everybody takes the big chunks.
Absolutely.
Now, I wonder, because I never looked at it, nobody ever considers it, what is the benefit to taking the annuity? To saying I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm going to live for 30 years, because it doesn't transfer.
Right.
That wealth you've accumulated does, but that wealth coming in stops the day you step off this earth.
I would I think I would want a financial planner to run all those numbers for me, because the question is, can you make more money off the $500 million that you get versus annuitizing it?
The wisdom is yes.
Yeah. So the wisdom is you can do better yourself when you get the lump sum of half the money than they could sprinkling it out to you.
The bigger wisdom is none of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
That's right. You're absolutely
Step out into traffic when you're leaving here, Paul.
I know.
Careful on 84.
Well, one of the things we talk about is if you leave an inheritance to a disabled person, and a lot of times folks are blessed and they say, well, I don't have any disabled people in my family. And I'm like, and fortunately I don't either, but every one of us are unfortunately one car wreck or one tragic event away from becoming a special needs or disabled person.
Yep.
So I have to kind of force the issue of, think about if your spouse or child, it does become quadriplegic, God forbid, or does become a special needs person. Oftentimes, you are receiving a federal or state medical benefit of some sort that can pay for therapies and expensive medicines that you otherwise couldn't afford. But if you leave an inheritance and that person comes into a large sum of money, Uncle Sam in the state's going to go, oh, you have money now. We're going to turn these off until all that money's exhausted, and then we'll turn it back on. But if you leave it to them in a special needs trust, they can take that money and they can use it to supplement your care, provide for things such as a special vehicle that you may need for transportation, a nice home that has the things built into it for your adaptability, just to enhance your life. And then if you don't use it all, it goes back to other family members.
Listen, people, pay attention to that too, because again, as you're not promised tomorrow, you're not promised good health tomorrow either.
I know.
As well. And us with a special needs child, with Maggie in our life, we fully realize there's something slightly backwards by the way the government approaches that. In her childhood, when all the extra expense, all the travel, all the stuff is part of your life, there is no assistance. Not till she is a special needs adult does any of it show up. So
that is interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to go into a deep dive with you on that sometime. Talk about why that is. You would think that
They've
is
got it.
kind
They've
of
got it a
backwards.
little wrong.
Yeah, it sounds like that.
Now in the school system, there's a high. I think you realize this. There is a higher per child amount that's allotted. It just depends on how that school distributes it.
That's true.
It's
Very much
supposed to be attached to that child because they know it takes extra effort, extra training, extra people, and extra programs. So there is the child gets attached. It's just whether they.
Yeah.
Question for another day too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part of that deep dive,
Yeah.
but as a family, that's
Absolutely.
that's extra. As we were down in, we took a whole day. She took off work. I took off work, and we took a whole day down in Nemours this past week. So
Oh, good.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
all good too. By the way, we just had to adjust medications.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. I wanted to thank you again for coming and speaking at our ribbon cutting and open house a few weeks ago.
Oh, listen, in case you weren't looking, in case you were focused on your speech and didn't look out at the faces, you had the right people there because there was a whole bunch of glowing, smiling faces. They were all very happy for you, Paul.
I sure appreciate the community coming out, and it was a fantastic day. We had beautiful weather and good fellowship and just a great time, and what a way to kick things off, and appreciate the warmth and hospitality of our community. We really love our clients. We love this community, and looking forward for years to come of serving the needs of our community.
You know, I had to push John over to the picture.
John Bennett. Yeah,
John Bennett. He was just standing over there with me and another lady, and I said, "John, get in there."
I know. I'm glad you did.
Oh no! And I said, "No, get in there."
Yes, he likes to be low key. He does, but I'm glad you did that. Yes.
Neat guy. And
yeah.
Then they all posed with the chamber and with the green jackets and everything else.
Yeah. My daughter Bailey, I think she was surprised at how loud those scissors were when we cut the ribbon, because I think she thought it would just be a loud or a soft cut of the ribbon, but it made a little clack, and she got tickled about that. So, yeah, it was great to have the kids there too, and my family and everything. So, and then we left. We had the ribbon cutting, and then the following week, I took my team out to Dallas for some firm training. We have a twice annual enhancement practice retreat that we do with other lawyers that do estate planning and other law throughout the country, and sharpened our skills and learned some more best practices that other firms do, and what works, what doesn't work. Just to make us even better at what we do.
I don't know what Dallas feels like now, but when I went out there 25 years ago, I guess, what a vibrant city.
Oh, yes.
I mean, there's something to do when you look left, right, and behind you. There's something to do.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, I did two wonderful things that you would have loved. One was I went to the George W. Bush Presidential Library.
Nice.
Was interesting. And it's a beautiful facility, and I geek out on all that political stuff and all the 9/11 stuff and the memorabilia and everything that's in there. And the other thing that I did as far as a tourist thing was I went to the JFK assassination site.
Wow.
And there's a audio,
the
grassy knoll. I've heard about it all my life, but never been there. And there's an audio tour you can download from the JFK Museum there at the Texas School Book Depository. And it tells you where to go and stand, and you hit play, and it has pictures and sound from that day.
And
walks you through it. And it takes about 30 to 45 minutes, and it was just wonderful to do that. And heard about that, read about all the conspiracy theories, but I actually went out to they have on the road, they have the X. They have 3 X's where the 3 shots were fired. And the last shot, of course, was the fatal shot to President Kennedy. And I actually went out in the roadway. It's an active roadway, but there was a lull in traffic. And I went out there and I looked up to the window, which they keep open with the lots there.
Book depository.
Yes. And I looked up and I'm like, oh, yeah, he could have made that shot easy. Because there's all these theories about, he couldn't have gotten off those shots. And I looked up there and I'm like, a trained Marine.
3 shots
could make that shot.
He can dial it in with each one.
It was really interesting from a historical perspective. All the history that I heard about over the years to actually see it in person. So
well, Paul Hamilton, I guess I kind of expected him saying, and I took in a ball game, but I didn't hear it.
I didn't take in a ball game. No. Between the train, I had 2 days where I was able to do a little sightseeing, and those were the 2 things I'd set out to do, and it was great. I want to tell people, I know you got to go to a break, but I want to let people know if they want to come to a workshop at our office, love to have them. We have one We have those on the second and fourth Tuesday of each month at 1 p.m. If you'll give us a call or go to our website under
They're
the events
free.
tab, you can sign up to come.
Free advice.
Yes, I love to share our information with people.
Hamilton Trust Estates and Elder Law people. And again, congratulations on the ribbon cutting. I know we missed one cycle, so I never got to congratulate you.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right. Listen, we got lots to talk about when we come back because there's a lot going on in this town. As you heard Paul say, there's a chamber business after hours tonight. We'll share that. We'll share the Friday after 5 in our downtown for tomorrow night. And then, man, you heard what Saturday's holding. Wow. We're Talk 92.1.